Thank you so much for this absolutely inspiring speech. Thank you very much. We now have our first panel on the issue of reshaping society through female leadership. And we have extremely outstanding people on this panel who will be able to share with us their expertise, their experience on what is actually female leadership and what makes it different to male leadership, and many other elements. May I call up to the panel the Vice President of the European Commission, Viviane Reding, a true fighter for women's rights and just recently successfully having had her very controversial legislation on quota for boardrooms of big businesses passed with an overwhelming majority in the Parliament. Congratulations again to that as well. May I then ask Oyungerel Tsedevdamba, the Minister of Culture, Tourism and Sports from Mongolia, to the panel. She also is a writer and has received awards, many awards for the book which is called Green-Eyed Llama. I suppose something that has reference to her home country. Then please come with us, Mrs. President of the African Union, Congress again, Mrs. Dlamini-Zuma. Very happy to have you participating in the panel discussion. And then Madame Abdullah Al-Qubaisi, the Deputy Speaker of the Federal National Council of the United Arab Emirates. Thank you for joining us. And we have a slight change in the program, and I hope that is okay for you. Instead of listening right now to Donatille Mogapaliza, who will only join us later, we will now ask Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga, Speaker of the National Assembly of Uganda and Executive Committee member of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, to join us here on the panel. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, this panel is about the issue that we heard already several mentions on in the speeches that we were listening to by outstanding female leaders who are reshaping society, and they gave us very concrete examples of what they achieved in their female leadership for their countries, for their societies. And what we would like to find out, what we would like to discuss more first on the panel, but then in a discussion including all of you, is about your own experiences, but also how could we achieve more female leadership and what are the ideas on that, as well as how would an increase in female leadership actually then advance society. And I'm very honored to have here Viviane Reding, and would like to give you first the floor to speak on that, please.
Thank you, Silvana. Ladies and gentlemen, dear sisters, I feel so warm at my heart when I see all these wonderful women coming from the whole world. And you know, when we are speaking about to advance the power making, be it in society, be it in politics, we always hear that women are not capable to do one thing, and that is networking. Well, when I look in this room, I know we are capable of networking. And when this is the beginning of a worldwide network of women who give each other the hand, who help each other, then our societies will become better. Because it is very difficult when you have in business or in politics just one token woman and all the rest men. Then this woman has to adapt to the male environment. But if we are several, then we can do what we do in normal life to get the equilibrium in our society. And that is much needed. And it is most needed in all the environments where women are still absent. Now, I must tell you that the experience of Europe is one where in our Nordic countries, mainly, the perception of women are needed at all levels of society has advanced well. In Central and Southern Europe, only in those countries where quotas were established, be it in economics or be it in politics, things went better. And where things went better, that means where you had this equilibrium between men and women, because the secret is men and women together. It is not man here globally and woman here globally. No, both together are the secret. And we made an analysis, not we, our business world made the analysis. So all these feministic organizations like Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank and Ernst & Young and McKinsey, they made the analysis to look at the business world. When you have a business led only by men and you compare the same business led by men and women, well, the second one makes a much better financial result. Which tells me women in business and women in politics is not about woman power. It is about economic results. It is about political results. So women mean business and women mean a better society. Everybody has seen that. But then when you look at the facts and the figures, you see very well that this happens only when there is a will. And I must say, very often it is the men who help us to go ahead. Now, we have just heard the leader of Jamaica tell us when she was called by the former prime minister to become prime minister and how she managed to change her society. In the European government, the European Commission, there are 33% of women. Why the male president of the Commission wanted women commissioners. And he has not given to the women commissioners the so-called soft responsibilities. He has given them the strong ones. And that makes a change in the way policy is done. And then let me give you some figures which show you what a long way we have to go. Because I am already standing at the figures of Europe. In our member states, in the 28 member states, the judges in our courts, 33%. That is a third. That's not bad. But then when you look at the most powerful court in Europe, the European Court of Justice, all of a sudden only 20%. And then when you look at the soft power, the European Court of Human Rights, then at 38%. So you see that we women have really to take in hands where the real power goes. I give you another example. If you look at our banks, very few women in the governing bodies. When you look at the European central banks, who are led by how many women? One or zero. So there is a real problem of governance here. And some intelligent people have said that if it had been Lehman sisters and not Lehman brothers, we wouldn't be in the problems we have today. And that is exactly why I tell you we need more women leading and having this aspirational effect to bring other women up. And we need women models also. Because if you are a young woman and you have started in business or in politics and you are all alone there, well, at the first problem you might give up. But if you see there are other women on top of me, and I can do as good as they have done, well, you will take courage at that moment and go for it. That is why it is so important to have women leaders and models for our young girls who have talent. And I tell you another story, which was the story why the European Parliament has voted last week with a splashing majority, 450 votes yes against 140 votes no, for establishing quotas in the boards of listed companies. Why? Well, we in Europe, I think we should be very proud because we have managed that the university graduates in Europe, 60% are females. So well done. The university system works well, we have talent, they go out of the universities, and then what is happening to those? They are lost in translation, somewhere in the middle, because if you look at the governing boards of our companies, there are just 16%, not 60, 16% left. Now, what a waste of talent. We cannot afford that. We cannot educate the talent, bring this talent in and then forget it somewhere. Not only because of economic reasons, it doesn't make sense simply not to utilize the educated talent in our economy, but also for a reason of our societies. Because we have seen everywhere that when you have women taking over together with men, then there are less errors made. The questions of family, the question of equality, the question of the heart in our life is taken serious. Now we need a lot more heart and a lot less hard policy. We need women on board, we need women in politics, there where they are on board, where they are in politics, things go better. So thank you for all those parliamentarians all over the world who help us to go to this direction. And I thank our European Parliament. You have been a model in our European Parliament and you have made a real breakthrough. That's a historical one. It's a historical one. It is going to be the first ever done and others will follow. There need to be models. The European Parliament here has been a model. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much, Viviane. And what she has not mentioned, she's been for many years a parliamentarian herself. And she once told me the story that for 20 years parliamentarian. So there is somebody who also crashed the glass ceiling for many other women to follow. And she once told me the story that when she was pregnant, very visibly pregnant, she then gave a speech in the parliament in Luxembourg and she made new laws and got the majority for laws and new rules for maternity leave and legal coming back to work, right?
No.
Or not different one?
No, we had this, you see, we in Europe, most of us have started from the droit Napoleonic law. And Napoleonic law only recognizes the man. Women are worth nothing. So I was so shocked. I was a young parliamentarian, pregnant like this, and my child should not get my nationality. And I said, no. So I took my pen, I changed the law, and I went to I went to make a speech, and I said, look, the only man around. Huh? I said, look, that is the child of whom? Mine, yes. Who is the father? You never know. So, so the only thing which is secure, that is the child belongs to the mother, so that the child does not get the nationality of the mother is completely out of reality. We changed the law before my first son was born.
Thank you. I mean, that's certainly a man cannot do in politics. Well, let's move on. Thank you very much for also showing your once more immediate impact on legislation as a woman. Let's go to Amal Abdullah Al-Qubaisi. I hope I pronounced your surname correctly. But before that, may I ask us to get a bit more cozy, because I have to apologize. I did not see Lilly Montano because she was not at her seat, so I thought she is not here. And that's why we now have to move up a bit closer to sit closer together. Should be no problem to make space for her to join us on the, or maybe you come here? Then, welcome. There should be a chair. Yeah. So, thank you. As women, we are very flexible, fortunately. We're used to unusual situations. So, what I would like to now introduce Amal Abdullah Al-Qubaisi, who's here from the United Arab Emirates, and actually she is leading a delegation of female parliamentarians from the Emirates, and it's the first time ever that it was a delegation of all the female parliamentarians going abroad to a conference together. I think this also is a strong sign of how important and what the effect of this conference, I hope, can be. Please, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honourable members of the Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really honoured to be among all these elite leaders that gathers here today to discuss and work on further empowerment of the role and status of women all around the world in general, and in politics and leadership positions in particular. I would like also to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude for the organizers of Women in Parliament's Global Forum for giving us this opportunity to participate in such an important strategic global gathering such as this, and in particular in participating in concerning the reshaping of the societies through women's leadership panel. Women have changed. Leadership roles have changed. Organizational practices has changed. And the social culture has changed. The issue of leadership depends basically on merits and skills. Recent studies indicates that there is no critical difference between male and female leadership as it comes to the similar, if they hold similar skills and merits. However, female leadership always characterized by effectiveness, passion and compassion, participation, creativity, and delegation of authorities. But despite all that, any female advantage in leadership style might be offset by the disadvantage that flows from prejudice and discrimination against women when they are leaders. As we all know, women face a range of challenges to hold leadership positions. And when it comes to female leadership, she really needs to focus on giving females the chance to lead and empowering them to be leaders. And in order to achieve more female leadership, we have to concentrate on changing the stereotypes and past perceptions of women leadership in general. And to overcome this, we have to bear in mind the following as proposals. The states, political parties, and parliaments like yourselves, and parliamentarians should also be called of adopting legislative policies that would lead to closing the gender gap and gender equality. An integrated approach to the legal and legislative reform should be also adopted. Women's rights would not be adopted by law. A single law, we cannot say that we can depend on a single law to obtain a women's right. It's all of legal system in the country that should really rather ensure the rights of women. The leadership of each country, and here this is a very important, we have seen so many leadership and their direct effect on what they have done in their country for the empowerment of women. The leadership of each country and state should show its full commitment to women empowerment. And the prevailing and social and cultural also restrictions should be removed by education and awareness programs. A clear media policy also should be adopted and followed so that the impact on thoughts and trends regarding women leaders and being in the leadership position can be changed. In general, women participation in leading roles is the cornerstone in achieving the goals of development for any country. As women leadership, impact on the society is really enormous, and we can witness it everywhere. And it would lead to so many goodness. One of them is to promote gender equality in all political, economical, social fields, and would create a tremendous development returns. Another advantage also of that would be the participation and involvement of both genders in public life, and that would increase. And the level of corruption would decrease, which would lead in general to the rule of law and good governance. Wherever a woman rules, you will find good governance. Women economic liberation, which plays a great role also in promoting women participation in the process of the economic decision-making, as been mentioned earlier, would be achieved. Positively also, it will affect the educational level of women, and that would lead in itself to high development opportunities. A society reshaped by women leadership would enhance the level of well-being and would provide also a division of work between both genders, and that would increase in itself the family income. In general, this means an improved quality of life. In conclusion, I would like to highlight the UAE's experience in female leadership. At the beginning, when the country was established, we faced common challenges as many other different countries, mainly the prevailing social and cultural customs that we had and traditions. Also, the society perception of women as incapable of holding, positions, especially in the political field, and having leadership positions. The weak also awareness of women themselves of the significance of exercising their political rights and also participating in decision-making positions was also an obstacle. Despite all that, today, after all these years of facing and working on these challenges, the UAE succeeded in a very short time to be the first in the Arab world in closing the gender gap and gender equality. And that wasn't a coincidence. UAE women parliamentarians now represent 17.5%. We have women parliamentarians represent 17.5% of the Federal National Council, the parliament. We have 4 female ministers and 3 ambassadors, and more to come. The Emirati women occupy 66% of the government sector workforce, and they hold 30% of the senior leading positions in the government. The percentage of females in higher education in public universities is 72%, and also the rate of literacy is 98%. As for business sector, the total investments that are run by women are above 50 billion dirhams, and there are more and more achievements that I cannot list here, but those gains and achievements made by the UAE for women empowerment and access to leadership and decision-making positions are the result of UAE's leadership, government, and people, their faith in women, and their commitment to the women empowerment, and they worked hard on this. Beside that, the comprehensive vision we've had sponsored by the wise leadership of the UAE, it all have led to such achievements. The continuous efforts and care of His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the UAE, and Her Highness Sheikh Fatima bint Mubarak, and the Chair of General Women's Union, Chair of Family Development Foundation, and Supreme Council of Childhood and Motherhood, it all have contributed to these achievements. Her pioneering as a woman, a female leader, her pioneering initiatives in leading the movement of women development and empowerment had great impact in closing the gender gap at the political, economic, and social level, and also the cultural, leading to the full empowerment of Emirati women. For me, and for all women in the UAE, she is our role model. And she is a great living example on a female leader who, her by herself, have managed and succeeded in reshaping the whole UAE society. So let me take this opportunity today and thank you again for managing and achieving to put all these women leaders together, and also men joining us, because we, as women, we have always to accredit a part of our success also to men. They are our partners and great supporters, whether they are on leadership positions or decision-making, or whether they are humble, husbands or fathers or brothers. But with the will of woman and her continuous commitment to more empowerment, I think that's what made us all here today, and that's what will make us the best representation and role models for young generations and more women to come into leadership positions and be, hopefully, in future better than us. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it was also very interesting to hear those unexpected figures for many, I would suppose, on the example from your own country, and also the personal elements that you mentioned in their speech. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to a completely different region of the world, to Mongolia, where we would also be quite interested in hearing some elements of how to change society by female leadership. And please, Minister, you have the floor.
Dear Excellencies, dear delegates, and thank you very much for European Union for organizing this global forum for women in parliament. And many Mongolian women parliament members wanted to come to join this forum, but unfortunately and fortunately, they couldn't join us because Mongolian Women Parliamentary Women's Caucus in the Parliament is just hosting in Ulaanbaatar an Northeast Asian Women Parliamentarians Conference on peace and education. And of course, you can imagine that for men, it's very hard to organize Northeast Asian conference on peace and peace, especially to make North and South Korea together in a table. But of course, you can guess who can brought them back together in the same table. And right now in Ulaanbaatar, North Korean and South Korean parliament members, along with everybody from Russia, Japan, China, and Mongolia, and Taiwan, all together sitting like sisters. And that's what women are doing in our country. And on behalf of Women's Caucus in the Mongolian Parliament, and on behalf of the government of Mongolia, it is my great honor to speak on this extraordinary global forum for women in Parliament. From our country's recent history on how we brought, what kind of road we took to bring women to leadership positions, I find that a whole process of increasing women leadership is a very humanizing experience. Why I'm saying it's a humanizing? Because just an idea of a woman candidate is very hard for traditional societies to accept. So families has to change, fellow politicians have to change, voters have to change, and communities have to change to accept women's candidacy for leadership positions. I experienced it with my own family, with my own fathers and with my own family members, and also I experienced ups and downs of all the bumpy road, throughout all the bumpy roads, that every time when Mongolian parliament adopted quota, the entire society became very human. And everybody is very polite, everybody is accepting and understanding. And as soon as parliament revoked the quota, which happened in Mongolia, and immediately the whole environment for women became very harsh. So the whole experience of bringing women leadership is changing the society itself already. Before we even vote inside our parliament, just our candidacy starts changing the families and societies. So that's why the female leadership, just an idea, as an inspiration, as an aspiration, is already a good, very good factor to change the society. Female leadership is also one of untapped potentials in most of the countries in the world. Like in Mongolia, for example, we have untapped mineral resources that is supposedly going to enrich our country. But I think women leadership is more untapped resources that Mongolia and other countries can enjoy from us, from our minds, that not just from the mind. So I always want to compare a woman's mind in contrary to the minds of those resources in our countries. So after a year of women's increase in parliament, we tripled our participation in the parliament for the 2012 election. Like from my own party, we had 0 women representation in our parliament just 2 years ago, but now we have 6 of us, including among the 11 women members of parliament. And just our presence in the parliament changes our party, changes our parliament, and changes our rhetorics and all the decisions, of course, subsequently. There are lots of stereotypes what leader is supposed to look like, how strong supposed to be a woman, to be considered as a leader. But I can confess that I cried already twice in the parliament just because I was disgusted of the decision, or because I just couldn't succeed, or the decision I wanted to succeed. So I just cried plainly. And then people said, you are the leader, why are you crying, why are you complaining? And I said, but I'm also supposed to represent the weaks, the weaker part of the people, the more vulnerable part of the people, because I'm the vulnerable person. So I immediately, I easily cry, and I use that to get support in my next voting, and which I received. So representing, not just we as a leader, we shouldn't just represent the strong part of the society. It's our deep belief, it's my deep belief that we will represent more part of the weaker part of the society than the strong part of society. That's why we will be able to contribute to reshape the world. Otherwise, when everybody pretends strong, when everybody pretends very content, then we don't see many problems in the society. Many vulnerable communities of the society don't dare to speak up. But when we are vulnerable, everybody speaks up. Everybody feels confident to speak up. And that's why we can see our problems from different angles, find different solutions. Therefore, we can offer better solutions to the world. So I would like to take this opportunity to repeat the other women leaders' calls that we never should forget to train and encourage the next generation of women leaders. Without next generation of women leaders, our aspirations are not sustainable. We know it from Mongolian experiences, because in Mongolia we had women leadership increase in 1992, in 1996, and then decrease sharply in 2000, then very marginal increase in 2008, and then big increase in 2012. So our road was not so reliable. So our success isn't the guarantee for tomorrow's success of the girls, our next generation of women. So in order to make sure that we have a sustainable female leadership, we have to continue to train without party borders, without country borders. Anywhere, when women succeed, the world will be changing for better. So that's why I would like to invite all parliamentarians to join I Know Politics, because I'm also expert of I Know Politics, and I would like to all of you to go to the I Know Politics website to spread the word to other parts of the world, to other women leaders who couldn't join us in today's parliamentary, I would like to say it a parliamentary session, because I wish every parliament was like this with so many women. And so please join I Know Politics through online, and let's encourage more women, more girls. And by the way, next generation of women doesn't mean they should be our girls and our daughters. They just next to us. They could be women older than us. They could be women who had never had the chance to go to leadership positions, even though she had all the qualifications to succeed. So sometimes it happens to me, often times, that I have to teach elderly and more senior women how to break through glass ceiling in their own companies, in their own provinces, and in their own aspirations. So there is a glass ceilings everywhere. Women with aspirations are everywhere, and we should help them, and we should together change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, you can already now continue to discuss the matters that are raised on this panel here on I Know Politics. And this is featured already since a few days, and also some ideas given there in the discussion forum on I Know Politics. And I encourage you to do this yourself, or to reach out to your constituencies and ask them to participate in those discussions. Now, let's move on to Lilly Gabriela Montano Viana. She will speak in Spanish, I think, and she is the President of the Senate of Bolivia. And very welcome here.
Muy buenas tardes a todos.
A very good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of my country and the Bolivian state, I would like to express my thanks for this opportunity for women to meet together and to discuss the increased participation and involvement of other women. Women's participation is a revolution that we're seeing right now in terms of the roles of women, and in the case of Bolivia, this is a revolution within a revolution, and it's part of a democratic and cultural transformation that we're seeing now. I don't think that when it comes to women's leadership, we can calque existing previous models of leadership that we've seen in the past, and colonial logic being applied, models based on exclusion. As women, we need to be able to come up with a new form of leadership. And in Bolivia, as in other Latin American countries, we are seeing new leadership models emerging. Models which are closer to the people, which are created for and by the people. This is not a kind of leadership that's distant, a leadership that encourages people to follow blindly. No, this is a kind of leadership that involves people. This is the kind of leadership we need, leadership that is built together with the people. And in Latin America, and specifically in Bolivia, we believe that female leadership needs to function with men by our side. We in our understanding, nothing is possible without cooperation. We need to stand side by side and introduce the social and collective elements. This is not an individualistic form of leadership, it's collective leadership. Now, this kind of leadership in Bolivia and in Latin America elsewhere, we are moving away from hierarchical models of leadership, and we are building a new model where we bring together male and female leaders in participatory systems of democracy where people are involved in decision-making, people and trades union movements and people's movements are involved. Female and male leadership needs to be a form of leadership that allows people to create ties with other countries, with other people, ties with men. And we're seeing now a profound transition and transformation in our country. This transformation wouldn't have been possible with the partnership and ties with social movements and various different parts of Bolivian society. It's made it possible to transform our state and our society. And the inclusion of women is at the very heart of this idea. In Bolivia, as in many other parts of the world, we were being held back by patriarchal ideas and shackles that were holding us back. But although we haven't thrown off those chains completely, we are moving some way towards that. There's a process of moving away from colonialism and moving away from patriarchal systems. For a long time, female leadership was regarded as a concession by men towards women, not as a right. But in Bolivia now, we are helping to create an idea of female leadership as a basic right. We need new social models that will make it possible for people to exercise their political and social rights and to exercise those rights in equal measure as men and women. This has meant, in the case of Bolivia, departing from old ways of thinking based on uniformity, based on the idea that we're all the same, and based on the idea that we all working towards the same future. Now, in the case of Bolivia, we have 6 indigenous peoples, 6 nations, and the idea of homogenization would be very destructive. We understand that these diverse lifestyles need to exist together, coexist peacefully, and therefore new women's leadership has to be an intercultural type of leadership, one that's based on the acceptance of differences. Of course, it's absolutely crucial that we put an end to gender-based violence if we want to achieve this. This is a serious, terrible form of violence, and we need to be able to combat this scourge efficiently. And whilst for as long as we're unable to do that, we will not be successful with achieving our goals. If violence against women continues, we will not be successful in having female leadership as a fact of life worldwide. We need a system of quotas to be put in place. In Bolivia, more than half of the people are women, so we shouldn't content ourselves with 30% quota or 20% quota. If we make up half of the population, then we should have parity everywhere in public life. And this is established by our constitution. And it applies to the parliament, the executive, and every branch of government. We want parity, that is to say 50% representation in all elected offices and all appointments. This is how we have been able to promote the women's participation in our country. In the Senate, for example, there are 40% women. In the Chamber of Deputies, there are 40% women's representation. We have women's leading. We have women speakers in both chambers of Parliament. 50% of the President's Cabinet Office is made up of women. The highest judicial authority in Bolivia is a woman. And women are prominent in all branches, therefore, of government. So what message can we get across to you and women around the globe? Well, 50% representation parity has made it possible to guarantee women's participation in decision-making. Women exercising power should inspire other women to aspire to the same thing. As women, we should not take office just to behave like other men. We need to behave like women and encourage other women to do the same. My struggle to defend women is a struggle for a better social model, for a better society that benefits us all, that works for the interests of everyone. And my struggle to defend women is in the service of humanity as a whole. It's not based on trying to increase GDP alone. My struggle is a struggle to move towards a new, different form of women's leadership. Bolivia is one of several Latin American countries that's going through a transformation in terms of dignity and sovereignty. This is the case for Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia. Is a country that has undergone a profound transformation. Indigenous people are at the heart of decision-making now. These indigenous people are the head of state, Evo Morales. He is from the indigenous people, and he has been leading this transformation, this change in my country. We are building up a system based on equality and equal opportunities. We are undergoing a profound democratic transition, therefore. Before concluding, I would like to express thanks to a number of parliamentarians. As a Bolivian and as President of the Senate in my country, I would like to thank the European Parliament for their role in Loto Azor cases, and Mr. Tariq, I'd like to thank this initiative there have been attempted terrorist attacks which have been averted, attacks directed at Evo Morales and other people. I and other colleagues were the target of an anti-democratic and racist attack. We suffered violence, we suffered at the hand of terrorists only because of an attempt to quash the democratic process that is ongoing now in Bolivia. Let me clarify that the Bolivian state acted in a sovereign way, in a line with the legal provisions and constitutional laws in order to defend the lives and the rights of thousands of Bolivians. To conclude, let me say that women's leadership is a force for transformation, a force for renewal. But this is only the case. Well, many of us here are free from violence. We live our lives free from attacks, but there are thousands, millions of people around the world who suffer day in, day out, who are subject to attacks at work, at home. And this is why we must struggle to eliminate violence against women. This should be our #1 priority. Women's leadership will never become a reality if we do not achieve this. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And I would like to make a few, so to say, housekeeping announcements and then another announcement. And more political housekeeping is, as of now, outside for the next 1.5 hours, there's coffee. So whenever you need to step outside, anyways, you can also take a cup of coffee or tea and bring this in with you. There is no rush to do this immediately. It's there for the next 1.5 hours. First housekeeping announcement. Second one is, you can see that we have a very large panel here, and it's a very interesting discussion, with very interesting statements made, and we will have another extremely interesting person that we look all up to because we want all parliaments to be like that parliament to be like. So this means we will have a longer session with this panel and a shorter one with the next panel, because there are less panelists than on the next one, just to give you a perspective for that day. So I would like to now ask Donatilla Mukabaliza, the Speaker of the Parliament in Rwanda, the example that has been mentioned so many times already in the speeches, to join us here on the panel. I have to apologize, I had not seen her because she was sitting somewhere else than expected. That's why we had a bit of a confusion here. So please join us here on the panel, and please, I'm very happy that you can be with us. Hello. Okay, then I will give the floor to Anni Podimata, who is from the European Parliament, taking a few points of view on what does the European Parliament do to also change these, change leadership, change society through female leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Silvana. So the European Parliament is quite committed, not without difficulties, of course, and not with the same level of commitment by each and everyone, but still this House is very much at the forefront of fighting for gender balance. I would like to say a few words starting from something that Vice President Reding mentioned when she made a reference to the causes of the financial crisis. And she said that most probably if we were not talking about Lehman Brothers and we were talking about Lehman Sisters, things would be, could be, should be, would be, I'm saying, quite different. And I add to this that I'm questioning, is it by chance that we were talking all along this crisis about golden boys? What's behind this? What's behind this sentence, golden boys? I think that behind this is a greedy behavior. It's a behavior that demonstrates what it is like to be eternally thirsty for more power and for more money. So I come back to something that most of our speakers underlined before. I believe that one woman among thousands of men in the higher ranks of financial institutions could not make big difference. Most probably, she will be either adapted or marginalized. But many women in the higher ranks of financial institutions, of central banks, as Ms. Reding pointed out before, in Europe our record is not a record for which we should be proud of. So more women in the higher ranks of financial institutions, central banks, governments, can make a difference because it can change mentalities. And I would like to say that I think...
Excuse me, if you would like to have side conversations, may I ask you to do that maybe outside the room, so that it's, because of the translation that people have to put on the headphones, it's quite difficult to follow that if it's a bit noisy in the room. So it would be very kind to do that outside then. Thank you.
So I'm saying that I think that there is a strong symbolism in President Obama's decision to appoint Ms. Janet Yellen as the first woman ever in the head of the Federal Reserve of the Central Bank of America. And I think that this is an example that Europe can take from the United States. Now, turning back to Europe, as I pointed out, our record is very weak. And in this specific issue, the European Parliament is very sensitive, and it fully explores its powers, its legislative powers, to promote a better gender balance in this very crucial sector, as it is the financial sector. Allow me to remind that we have blocked for several months the appointment of an ECB board member because of non-respect of gender balance. And today, as we are having here our conference, during this same time, at this same house at the European Parliament, in the frame of another committee, a hearing is taking place among different candidates for a key position. The head of the newly established single supervisory mechanism in the frame of the ECB, of the European Central Bank. And the only thing that I can tell you is that the gender dimension is very, very seriously taken into consideration. Now, the question is this a women's fight? I think that this is not a women's fight. This is a men's and women's fight, because it's a fight for a more inclusive, so more coherent and efficient democratic society. And this is our goal, and I strongly believe that this is how we are going to regain people's, citizens' trust towards politics, policies, and politicians, because in Europe, and not only Europe, I believe, we are facing a crisis of confidence towards representatives, towards institutions. And why is this? For many different reasons, but among these reasons, I believe that lies one very important one, and this is the fact that we haven't been efficient enough in fighting against all kinds of inequalities before and during the crisis. And I believe that gender inequality is certainly one of these inequalities. So if there is a lesson that I believe that we should learn, not to allow a similar crisis to happen again in the future, to hit our societies, I think that this is through fighting against all kinds of inequalities. We have to be to the very front line of this fight because we know, because we all have experienced inequalities, we know what inequality means, and so we are the best equipped and formed to lead this battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anni. And I think the example that you mentioned with regard to appointing the European Central Bank board member also shows that you need a majority in Parliament, and obviously majority you can only have with men together. So this was an important sign also that men together with women are fighting for this kind of more gender balanced, important boardroom position. Same for the quota legislation that Viviane Reding was talking about earlier. A majority in the House wouldn't have been possible with the men who still constitute for the majority in the Parliament here. So let's move on to Rwanda. And we are very pleased to hear how actually did this female leadership in Rwanda that everybody is referring to, North and South and East and West, how did that help to reshape society? And what is the Rwandan example? What can we learn from it? Please, Donatilla.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, President of the European Parliament, members of the Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin by thanking the Women in Parliament's Global Forum for organising this event to discuss the participation of women in political and economic life within our societies. It's an honour for my country, Rwanda, and for me to be part of this panel as Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies in Rwanda, a country which has the highest level of women's representation in a parliament out of the whole world. In most countries, active participation by women in political spheres and in general spheres tends not to be as high, and this is why in Rwanda we, I think, are an example of how things could be. My presentation or speech will focus on our experience in Rwanda when it comes to female leadership. Women have a major role to play in a correctly functioning society. They provide life, they produce goods and services, and they protect society's values fully when it comes to development. In my country, in Rwanda, female participation in decision-making bodies is based on a high-level political decision. And this was a strategic choice and embodies respect for women's rights and fully as set out in international instruments, and by that I mean this platform and also the Beijing Declaration and so on. Women play an important role through the different institutions in the country and thus make a contribution to women's empowerment. Women are represented in decision-making bodies in the public and parastatal sectors. In the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, representation of women has increased gradually or progressively. In 2003, there were 49% women in the chamber. In 2008, 56%. And after the elections in September of this year, they had reached a total of 64%. In the Senate, 38%. In the government and in the cabinet, 37%. 44% in local administrative bodies, and more than 40% in the country's judiciary. The statistics for civil servants for 2011 show that 54.5% of Rwandan civil servants are men and 45% are women. So this is the figures, which I think are represented in a document which is available here. The role of women is important in different areas, particularly when it comes to trying to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. In my country, we've achieved all of these goals, even and those which we haven't achieved yet, we will do so by 2015. Policies, programmes and laws take into account gender issues, and these have been initiated and implemented with female participation. We've brought down infant mortality from 54% to 52% in 2010, and fertility rates have gone up from 6 to 4 women, children per woman, and this was an important issue for us in terms of development. We are continuing to take every effort in order to make sure that population growth is in line with economic growth. I think that figures can also point to female leadership and show how they behave and what differentiates them from men. They tend to be more conciliatory, more humble and more practical than their male counterparts, and this is shown by the things that they say. They tend to focus more on social welfare and the services provided to communities. They focus on essential aspects of our lives and don't waste too much time in pointless details. They like and appreciate cooperation with men, and this is something that we have found in Rwanda through a partnership through our partnership with men. We want men to understand the gender issue and the need for women to take part fully and to be involved in political life in our country. They don't give up, fight their way through to the end in order to achieve their goals, and they're good at managing both assets and people. We have institutions which are managed by women in our country, and I think these show how well women manage public assets. A study has also been carried out by the World Bank, and it shows that credits given to women or loans given to women, although they may be very low in value, benefit disproportionately or benefit society disproportionately, i.e. more so than loans given to men, which might be much larger in value. In order to promote women's roles as much as possible in the country, we need to rise to certain structural challenges, such as our patriarchal society and resistance to change. We also need to attack ignorance, poverty, and access to resources, and make sure that we tackle domestic violence and lack of support for other women. We need to challenge stereotypes as well. Erroneous stereotypes about women tend to undermine women's possibilities of achieving leadership roles, and this is why we need to take legal steps in order to ensure gender equality. We have already done a great deal because all of the discriminatory laws which worked to men's favour have been reviewed, revised, and so now all laws take gender into account. We have a permanent dialogue going on with citizens on gender equality. We need women's consultation fora in order to allow us to share experiences and analyse policy, and in order to reinforce our role in society. We also need to build up women's capabilities, work with girl children, and use techniques such as coaching. And we need to have specific strategic policies geared towards a sustainable society and partnership between men and women. As you know, education and training for young women is essential when it comes to creating future female leaders. In order to promote equal participation of women and men in public life, we need to do as much as we can. This will help to be a driving force and generate more economic benefit for the country, particularly in areas where we need to develop further. Our society is continually changing. Access, or women's access to remunerated posts and to decision-making bodies increase their economic possibilities and will be essential when it comes to the sustainable development of a fairer society. And I am convinced that with strong commitment from political stakeholders in terms of governance, and that's particularly the case for women leaders or for female leaders, we can make progress between equality and thereby offer more advantages and opportunities to all. I'd just like to say now what His Excellency Mokagame said at a meeting with a group of women in 2013.
Women, they are deserved dignity. Your role gives dignity to the whole nation. Je vous remercie.
Honourable Speaker, thank you very much. And I think it was extremely interesting also to hear that it's not only in your parliament that you are setting an example for other countries, but that the figures in your government and public administration are also an example for many other countries, and the gender equality you achieved there in your country. Congratulations on that as well. I would like to now give the Speaker of the House of the Parliament of Uganda as the last speaker on the panel, because we had the honor to listen to Ms. Dlamini-Zuma before in her keynote. Then I would take 2 or 3 short remarks from the floor and then end this panel at 5:15 so that we are catching up in time. The second panel will be much shorter because we have less panelists on this. As I apologize again, I did not see some of the speakers that are on on this panel because they had been placed differently in the room. I apologize for that. But between the two panels, we have a very, very challenging and interesting and Finnish perspective on gender equality from Taija Halunen, who you all know, on the elements of how to be the change that you wish to see, be the change that you wish to see in the world yourself. So this is something I believe that also is expected of many of the female parliamentarians. So, but now let's move on. We have a final speaker on this panel, then 2-3 remarks from the floor. I can take, unfortunately, a lot more because we're a bit running out of time, as you can all, I suppose, observe. And then we will catch up with that time later so that we can all get in time to the awards and then to the dinner. Please, Mrs. Kadaga, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I salute the Chair of the African Commission, Honourable Zuma, distinguished colleagues. I'm delighted to be here today to address such a big gathering of women parliamentarians. I'm happy to be here also as the first woman speaker of my country, but also as a long-standing member of parliament and a woman activist. I'm also here to represent the Inter-Parliamentary Union, where I'm the member of the Executive Committee of the IPU in charge of East Africa. And as you know, the IPU has among its goals the achievement of gender equality in politics. So let me extend the greetings of the IPU President, Mr. Radi, for this successful meeting. And I thank you all for hosting us and bringing us together. Now, sometimes one thinks that if you make the law, it is sufficient, but this is not so. I had an interesting experience when I first became Speaker about 2 years ago. Our constitution is extremely gender sensitive, so I expected that everybody who was acting would act in conformity. But I had a rude awakening when in the first session, the list of chairpersons of committees was presented, and all were men except one. So including from my own party, which has been the champion of women's emancipation. So I told the whip that I did not accept his list. Could he go back and change it? I said, I'm giving you 1 week to change this list. And I also told the opposition, I'm giving you at the same time to change your list. 1 week later, they all came back with exactly the same list. So we battled back and forth until I said, okay, if you defeated me for the first session, I'll fix you in the second session. So in the second session, I made sure that we amended the rules of procedure. I worked with the Women's Caucus of Parliament, and now, under our law, it's 40% of the committees must be chaired by the women. If I had not been awake, it would not have happened. I've also noted that my being a speaker in the House has energized the women of the country to be able to bring their issues, because they know that there is a woman in that place who will be able to listen to them. So we do get petitions on topical issues, on the economy and so on, from women, which I think would not have happened if they were not sure that I was there. I have been struggling to introduce a certificate of gender equity in the Parliament. I've failed twice, but speaking now in the last session, we have managed to introduce a certificate, a checklist on human rights, and I expect that before I end my tenure, I will have introduced a certificate of gender equity, which will be a requirement for all the members of the cabinet to bring their bills, their proposals, to comply with that. But coming back to the issue of the IPU, the IPU has done quite a big job, and I'm happy to report that IPU has been instrumental, especially in the Arab world, in making sure that changes happen. We are delighted especially about Saudi Arabia, which has now made changes in the law. We still have a challenge with Qatar, but we're very, very happy about the progress in the Arab world, and this has been a result of engagement, regular engagement, including sanctions, where delegations that do not bring women issued with sanctions. I think we are the only body, international body, that does have that strict arrangement. So we are also happy for that to report that at least 30% women do attend the IPU assemblies every 6 months, and it is growing, and we're happy about that. Now, how has this happened? This has happened because of the participation, the resolve, the advocacy by the women members attending the IPU, and many of you are here today. I can see some of them. So I want to salute the women who have made it possible to work together within the IPU to make the changes. Of course, I congratulate my neighbors, Rwanda. They make us proud as Africans at 63%, South Africa at over 40%, Mozambique at over 39%, Tanzania at over 36%, Uganda at over 35%. But it's also in the same continent where we have, especially West Africa, countries like Nigeria below 5%, countries in Central Africa below 10%, and so on. So there's a lot we need to do. We are happy to report that Tanzania is tabling proposals for parity. I hope that they'll be able to pass it through this January. We are looking forward with excitement to what Tanzania is going to do on the issue of parity. It will be a good example in the East African region. So, despite those positive developments, it's a matter of regret that the change has been so slow. If we work at this speed, we shall not achieve parity until 2065. So I think, friends, the challenge is still ahead of us. We need to address it. Of course, there are many challenges faced by women. They have been highlighted in public life: the lack of support in political parties, the lack of funding, the lack of confidence, and then the family responsibilities. But I want to make some proposals about areas that we think we should focus on. We need to take a look at the legal and political framework in which each of us is operating, with a view to reforming those areas to address discrimination, if we find bottlenecks to address them and the challenges. So it is clear that in most of the countries that have achieved the over 30%, the bulk of these have a proportionalist system. I think Rwanda is one of those that has that. Of course, Seychelles has achieved it without a proportional system, and we are excited about Seychelles. Secondly, the great majority implements some kind of measures to promote women in the form of legislated or voluntary quotas. And then the third one is that a number of the countries that have made changes have taken advantage of the policy moments, especially in periods of transition, to make changes and reforms to the existing legislation. So electoral systems are important. Special temporary measures are very key. Political moments are very important, and opportunities should be taken as quickly as they are seen. The second one is to focus on the overall empowerment of women. Women need to be knowledgeable, they need to gain skills, they need mentors, they need supporters, they need networks, mostly they need funds. Most times these are not accessible, so we need to address how our electoral system governs that area of the women's electoral process. Many times women have no money, no access to the media, and are unable to organize. So we need to support them in that way. The third priority is to focus on processes and institutions to ensure that they are gender sensitive. Friends, when women enter the political institutions, they enter a man's world. That's where you find the men's clubs, where women have no access, where decisions are taken in the night, and when you come for a meeting in the morning, the men are leading and you are following. But we do still have the challenge in that women do not stop being mothers or wives. We do have a colleague in the Canadian Parliament who told us that her baby is the most famous child in Canada. This is because the child was born when she was in Parliament, and for over 2 months after the child was born, she used to take the child to Parliament, and they kept on photographing and photographing and photographing. He was also on the front page, meaning that a baby in Parliament is a novelty. So we need to address that issue as well. Just this week, I saw another of our colleagues, I don't know which part she came from. She also was sitting with a small baby of about 2 years old. The baby has been attending Parliament with her ever since she was born. This is again a novelty. But recently, when we were in New York at the meeting of the women speakers, we received information that in one of the countries, a head of state had sacked a minister for not only getting pregnant, but taking maternity leave. So as IPU, we have decided to take up this matter with the Committee of the Human Rights of Parliamentarians, because we think that head of state violated her rights to a family life by punishing her for getting pregnant and taking maternity leave. So these are some of the challenges that we need to handle. So we as leaders, as women leaders, what have we done to ensure that our women colleagues are able to work, still be mothers, and still do their work? The creches are important, daycare centers are important, the working hours are important. These are all areas that we need to look at so that we can enable the women to work both as mothers but also as political leaders. In some parliaments, there have been efforts to align the parliamentary calendar to the school term so that during the holidays, the House is also on recess to enable the mothers also to be able to stay with the children during the recess. But of course, it's not possible everywhere, but these are some of the things that could be done to make it possible for the women and their families to stay together during the recess and during the holiday so that they have some quality time instead of continuously being absent from one another. So these are among the three priorities. One, the reform of the institutions, the reform of the laws, and the overall empowerment of the women is extremely important in making sure that they are able to carry out their responsibilities. So I want to appeal to our male colleagues, also to our political parties, when we ask ourselves, what are our political parties doing? What are the roles we are playing in those political parties? Are we singing for them, clapping for them, cheering them? What is it the women actually doing in those parties? What is the level of representation of women within our parties? How many of us are members of the central executive committees of our parties? Do we contribute to the manifestos of our parties? Are our voices listened to when we speak during those party meetings? All these are areas that we need to do if we are going to keep a foothold within the political parties, which are the gatekeepers of the political offices. So I'm delighted to be here. It's always a pleasure to meet together. Each time we come out energized. I look forward to a very fruitful 2 days together. Thank you, the EU, for inviting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for also highlighting the important work of the IPU, which does a lot in order to achieve more gender equality in the parliaments. And I think it's also something that we can look at as an ally, that there are organizations which are actually increasing already gender equality in parliaments with the means that they have. I will change the proceedings again in order to keep some of the timing. So I will just ask Ms. Dlamini-Zuma for one final line for this panel. There is no time, unfortunately, to take now reactions from the floor. But as the subjects of panel 1 and panel 2 are very much related, I would suggest we take stock at the end of the discussions of panel 2 and then see that we get as many participants' voices in as possible once we have the smaller panel discussing, because we had a broad range of different perspectives here from all continents, basically. Africa will not be represented on the next panel, it was very strongly represented here. So I hope it's in line with your expectations that we will change again now. I will give for a final question, a precise question that I will ask Ms. Dlamini-Zuma, and then we move on in the program and catch up a bit of time that way. I hope this is in order with what you would like to see. So Ms. Dlamini-Zuma, because we were listening to your extremely interesting speech before, and as one of the true outstanding leaders that you are, could you give us one concrete example where you say, this is where I exercised female leadership, where this was something that you as a woman were able to achieve because you're a woman and the way you did that? Is there one thing that you can tell us to conclude that discussion here?
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll just use one example. When I became Minister of Health, I read in one of the World Bank publications that tobacco was going to kill more people after 2020, I think it said. more people than AIDS unless we do something about it. And I decided then in the 90s, it wasn't very popular, that I was going to protect children, non-smokers, but also to some extent the smokers from getting those problems. And I started a campaign to stop smoking in public. And everybody, including my comrades, said, no, comrade, you have lost it. There's no way you can stop people from smoking in public. And because you don't have time, I won't go into details. But we strategized that we are going to do it in 2 steps. The first step was to conscientize and educate the public about the dangers of smoking before talking about banning it in public. So once the public was aware of the problems, then we decided to put a law that would stop smoking in public, in restaurants, even in the home. The child can say to the father, no, 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 you're not allowed to smoke here, go and smoke outside. Mm-hmm. And of course, even members of government didn't believe it, and they said, no, this law will never work, we don't have enough police to police. I said to them, this is one law that does not need a single policeman. The public will police it. And indeed, we passed that law. In South Africa, you will not find smoking in public. But if you try, the public will tell you very quickly that you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things. And I looked at it because it had benefit across society. Mm-hmm. And now, South Africans, when they go to these countries where they still smoke in restaurants and so on, they find it very strange. But they were initially opposed to it, some of them. In fact, they took me to court. Mm-hmm. I fought the matter in all the courts, till the highest court, and I won. Thank you.
Very good, and thank you very much for this very concrete example of what you achieved in your political career. So I would like to thank this outstanding high-level panel for all the contributions and the thoughts that you shared with us. I mean, I think it's not very often that there is a panel which is composed of the speakers of the Senate of Bolivia, of the Speaker of the Rwandan Parliament, and of the Parliament of Uganda, of the Minister from Mongolia, the Vice President of the European Commission. I had to leave, but we have the Vice President of the European Parliament here with us the whole time, and indeed the Deputy Speaker of the Federal National Council of the United Arab Emirates, all united on one panel. And I at least saw a lot of similarities in the many contributions and the speech that Ms. Dlamini-Zuma made. So I think there is something that really is reuniting women in politics around the globe, across the world, and I think that's something really empowering to think about. How can we together then advance the cause of more gender equality in parliaments? Thank you for your contributions, and keep in mind we have a joint discussion on both panels just after the second panel. Thank you.
Okay. Honourable Dlamini-Zuma, allow me to address you an open invitation for some EU member states in order to teach them the proper implementation of the anti-tobacco law. So this is one point. And the second point is that in your inspiring speech just before, you emphasized very much on the importance of the right of education for men and women in despite of gender, in despite of religion, in despite of nationality. And I think that there is an extraordinary living example in this fight, and this is Malala Yousafzai, the 16-year-old school pupil and education activist from the town of Mingora in the Swat district of Pakistan. Malala Yousafzai has been just awarded with the Sakharov Prize the week before in the European Parliament's plenary in Strasbourg. And I suggest that we are listening to the video message that she has sent to our conference.
Thank you so much for inviting me, but I'm really sorry that I'm not there. And it is my dream to see women and men being treated with equal rights and being given equal rights. And that is my goal, to work for the girls' education and to work for equality. And women should struggle for it. They should not wait for someone else. Instead of standing in front of the parliament, why don't we go inside the parliament and join politics and make decisions? Because decision making is all right. And we are the ones who are going to change the future. But we must believe in ourselves, we must trust ourselves, and we must believe in the power that we have, that we women have. And I'm hopeful that we are soon going to achieve our goal. Thank you so much.
We also received a message from Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State of the United States of America. And we have, yes, you come forward. We have, this is a written message, not a video message, and it's read out to us by a girl similar age to Malala, who has also a very remarkable life. She is from Montenegro originally, and due to the Balkan conflict grew up in Australia. Would you come forward, Masha, please? And with her is Mila. They both are in the same school, were in the same school, and they will read out to us the message from Hillary Clinton.
Dear friends, it gives me great pleasure to extend my greetings to... Dear friends, it gives me great pleasure to extend my greetings to all those gathered in Brussels for the Women in Parliament's Global Forum. The full participation of women in every aspect of society remains the unfinished business of the 21st century. As we know, women account for more than 50% of the global population, but hold less than 20% of all parliamentary seats around the world. This is why I am so delighted that the Women in Parliament's Global Forum is bringing together the 9,000 female parliamentarians who are currently serving across the globe, so that we can work to expand your influence and increase your numbers. We need women at all levels of government, from executive mansions and foreign ministries to municipal halls and planning commissions, from negotiating international disarmament treaties to debating town ordinances. It is not only about fairness and equality. Having more women in public service is the smart thing to do. If you are trying to solve a problem, whether it is fighting corruption, sparking economic growth, or strengthening the rule of law, you are more likely to succeed if you widen the circle to include a broader range of expertise, experience, and ideas. When women participate in peacekeeping and peacemaking, we are all safer and more secure. When women participate in the economy, everyone benefits. And when women participate in public service, the effects ripple out across society so that families, communities, and whole nations can flourish. While I regret that I am unable to be with you today, I look forward to hearing the outcomes of this meeting and send my best wishes for an enjoyable, productive, and rewarding experience. Onward, with good cheer and best regards, I am, sincerely yours, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you very much, both. And of course, we thank the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hillary Clinton.